Hello and welcome to the Kojo Show. I am your host Kojo, and this, by the way, is a free midfield takeover. I am your host Kojo from the Free Midfield Podcast, and today on Usman Talks United, I have three wonderful guests with me. Firstly, someone I've worked with before, a great guy, Liverpool fan. I don't really say that about Liverpool fans enough. Steve, how you doing, bro?
I'm not too bad at all. I'm glad the transfer window is closed because I was sick and tired of the reactionaries on the Liverpool fan base on Twitter, who, by the way, are not representative of the people that do go to the game. I'm glad it's closed. To be fair, mate, I couldn't deal with it anymore.
I hear that. I hear that. Joined also by Chelsea fan for the first time doing a show together. I'm very excited about this. Claudio, how you doing, my friend?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me on. I'm really looking forward to this show, to be honest with you. Same with what Steve said, I'm kind of happy the transfer window is shut now because it was getting to the point where there's a lot of panic happening, even on Chelsea fan base. So I'm kind of glad that the transfer window is closed now and we can sort of dive into the game from the weekend, which wasn't so pleasing on the eye in the second half, but it was good to sort of dig into it and do a little analysis on it, really. So I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. I'm glad to have you on. And finally, last but definitely not least, for the first time, I think, well, definitely with me, is this your first ever podcast ever? Well, then this is football history. This is history right in the middle right now. Maram, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. I'm so happy that you found some time to come and join us today. It's really special to have you on. So,
Yeah, happy to be here, really.
yeah, you gotta be here. You gotta be here with us. That's how we do things. And we're gonna start with the game that we're gonna talk about today is obviously Liverpool versus Chelsea, a game that ended 1-1, goals from Kai Havertz and a penalty from Mohamed Salah after a handball, which a lot of people are calling controversial as a red card, not as a penalty. It was a penalty. People saying it's a bit harsh as a red card and so on and so forth. So I'm gonna go to Claudio first as the Chelsea fan on this one.
Yeah.
Reece James, before we go more into tactical depth, Reece
Yeah.
James as a penalty red card. Do you agree with the red card situation?
It's such a tough one, wasn't it? To be honest with you, when you look at the replays, I think what I was finding hard to understand was how Anthony Taylor made a decision so quick when he went over to the monitor. So obviously the VAR came in, they asked him to go to the monitor. He didn't actually review the video footage. He went over, saw a picture, didn't actually see the full footage itself, and just literally went in his pocket, got the red card straight away. So in my head, first of all, was thinking, for him to make a decision that quick, such a big decision, such a big game, I think that was a massive sort of game changer in that sense for the game itself. And you don't want to see big games like Liverpool versus Chelsea ruined. So I think it's the right decision. That obviously I'm a Chelsea fan. There's slight bias there. I do feel like he was a little bit unlucky with it. I've seen him red carded before for those types of handballs. I don't think it was sort of fully deliberate because it hit his knee first and went onto his arm. But you can see his arm was slightly in an unnatural position. So, yeah, I mean, when I first saw the red card, to be honest, I was shocked. I wasn't shocked it was a penalty, but I was slightly shocked it was a red card, in all honesty.
And Steve, what do you say to that? Do you think it was a straight red as a level of law? Yes, but
At the time, I tweeted penalty, yes, red card, not so sure. But then as you watch it back a few times, VAR would have just said to him, he's handled that on the line. I'm going to show you a still.
Yeah.
It's definite penalty. You've now got to decide whether he stays on the pitch or not. That's your call, but it is your error. So we do have to bring it to your attention. I think it's difficult with VAR because we've been crying out for over a year now for some form of consistency. And we've asked for VAR to follow the rules of the game because it hasn't been, to be fair. So in this case, if you read up on the handball and they follow the rules of the game, then unfortunately, because it did spoil the game, then the red card is the appropriate action. It actually helped Chelsea more than it helped Liverpool because what Chelsea then did was play more counter-attacking football and drop off a little bit and fill in the spaces in front of the back four better than they were doing previously. The point I'm trying to make is when Reece James is playing, he's a threat going forward. So Liverpool would have enjoyed playing in the space that was left in behind him. But unfortunately, there wasn't any with the changes that Chelsea made. But we'll get into that. But to answer your question, yes, we need a VAR to follow the laws and the rules of the game. We've been crying out for it, and they have, to be fair.
they have indeed. Now, we're gonna get into the nitty gritty of the tactical stuff. And Mariam, I'm gonna get the lineups up first because I think everyone at first, well, sorry, everyone, maybe people that are not Liverpool fans, I'll say firstly, were quite surprised at the introduction of Harvey Elliott as into starting this game. When you saw this lineup here, I hope that's clear for everybody to see. What did you think Liverpool's game plan was coming to this game with Harvey Elliott in that midfield three?
Okay, so actually, I wasn't surprised about Harvey Elliott because I did watch his previous game and he's a really exciting talent. And I think that with the injuries that Liverpool had previously, I think they needed some energy in the midfield and a player that could progress the ball really well moving forward. I thought his movement was quite sublime, to be honest, before that red card when Liverpool were going forward. And I don't think we're very unfamiliar with Liverpool's game plan. I think we're all familiar with it. It's the idea of going forward, having Trent Alexander-Arnold overlap with the crosses and Mohamed Salah cutting inside. I think what we ended up seeing actually was quite interesting was Trent Alexander-Arnold actually underlapping and moving to the central spaces rather than the typical overlaps and crosses, which I think was Liverpool burying their own grave because after the red card, I don't think they had quite the same impact with him in the central spaces. So I think that was my interesting observation of the game. So I was forced to watch it. I'm forced to watch every Liverpool game because my dad's a Liverpool fan. so I'm quite familiar, yeah.
Okay. Who do you support? Just out of curiosity.
Manchester United, unfortunately.
I'm good with that. Firstly. That's fantastic. That's an interesting household, though. Your dad supports Liverpool, you support Man United. That is quite interesting indeed.
Yeah.
Dynamic, definitely. Very interesting dynamic. We come to Chelsea now. And Claudio. Now, your lineup doesn't really surprise me there in terms of how your team is lined up with Reece James out wide, with Marcos Alonso, who started a lot more than Chilwell. That's one thing that surprised me, but maybe going forward, he has a bit more. Were you happy with this lineup? And tactically, what did you think this lineup could do to Chelsea? Because considering your first half, in my opinion, I think you kind of had control of the game.
Yeah, I think we know under Tuchel defensively how solid and tactically aware he's been since he's joined. I mean, I think one of his first press conferences was that he said he wanted to make us a difficult team to beat, and he's literally done that from day one since he's come in. He's really the back three is so organised. He's brought the best out of players like Rudiger and Christensen, where if you looked at them previous to Tuchel arriving, you may have thought they could have been sold the following summer. And Tuchel's come in and he's literally just lifted and elevated the game massively. So, when you sort of play against us now, we're going to be difficult to break down with the system he's got in place. Marcos Alonso, he loves that left wing back position, doesn't he? He was fundamental under Conte's first season as a left wing back, and he's shown it again. And I think the reason why he's playing is because he is in good form at the moment, and also he's had a full pre-season under his belt. Unlike Chilwell, which obviously came back later from the Euros. So, yeah, it was a shame. I was actually really worried when it came to half-time because obviously the sending off happened and Kane went off with an injury as well. So I thought that was two massive blows at that point. So for Tuchel to sort of, get one in at half-time, you had to make sure they stay composed. I think we've actually been charged with misconduct from that game following the red card because of players' behaviour. So you had to really sort of regroup, make sure that everyone was staying level-headed. And we came out in second half and it was just, obviously we'll probably dig into that a bit more, but really impressive.
Absolutely. Now, Steve, compare your first half performance to your second half performance, because obviously 11 against 10 is very different to 11 versus 11. We all know how that goes, and teams tend to be a lot more defensively stubborn. Now, Chelsea took off their goal scorer in Kai Havertz and brought on Thiago Silva, which essentially meant if I'm right, they had maybe 6 defenders on the pitch. If you add in Alonso and Reece James as maybe wing-back, full-backs, depending on formation, Christensen, Rudiger, Aspilicueta, and Thiago Silva as a back, as 4 defenders, and then your 2 wing-backs. Do you think that's the reason why Liverpool struggled to break them down, or do you think there was something tactical that he did wrong, as Klopp did anyway, that made you not take advantage of the 10-man situation?
So when you see the team that was selected in the first half, you look at that midfield, it's a little bit imbalanced because Liverpool won the Champions League, got to a Champions League final, got to within a point of City with Jordan Henderson sitting in front of Trent Alexander. The imbalance was evidenced in the 9th minute when there was a ball played into the box and Jordan Henderson got to it on the volley with his left foot. It actually went out for a throw-in. And straight away you're thinking he's tried to volley that with the left foot. There's no more one-footed player in our team than Jordan Henderson. So clearly for me, there's an imbalance, and there's been an imbalance in a couple of the games so far. Thiago can't be 100% fit, otherwise he would be in there because of his ability to control the game. Interesting to see the inclusion of Harvey Elliott. Not surprising, but interesting in the sense that we can't trust Naby Keita to do the discipline side of the role. We can't trust him in big games to follow the game plan. And the best example I can give of you of that is when we lost to Real Madrid and he was taken off before half-time because he was just doing his own thing. So Harvey Elliott is learning. He's an intelligent lad. When he picks the ball up, what he sees in front of him is really promising. But he's also understanding what Klopp wants from him tactically. So we're a little bit imbalanced in the first half. And I thought we started well. For 15 minutes, we really tried to take the game to Chelsea. And then with a team of Chelsea's quality, of course, they're going to get opportunities to come back into the game. There's a great header by Havertz to open the scoring. And they did have one or two other chances. Here's the thing. Half-time comes and Reece James gets sent off. Frank Lampard can't do with that Chelsea team at half-time what Tuchel did in terms of tactically set them up for the second half. I think at that point he'd said to them, boys, we're going to leave here with something. We're not going away with nothing. So if you have to put in a masterclass of defensive performance, then do it. And what was really telling is at the final whistle, when the Chelsea team celebrated, not many teams celebrate coming to Anfield and getting a 1-1 draw. But Chelsea did, and the reason why they did is because of moral victory for them, because they went down to 10 men, and they've shown a side to their game we didn't see under Lampard, and they've shown a side to their game that they're developing week in, week out with Tuchel. They're the real deal. They'll be there at the end of the season. They'll be in the shakedown. Make no mistake about that. That was one of the best defensive performances I've seen from the side at Anfield. We had 23 shots, and they had 6. So it's like almost a 4-to-1 ratio. But that wasn't to be. You couldn't say you wouldn't expect that because we had 65% of possession at the end of the game as well. So in terms of Chelsea's performance, of the two teams, Chelsea come away from that game a lot happier, and it's frustrating for us because the plan when you play a team that does what they did in the second half is always still for Liverpool to try and get round the back of the fullbacks, and that was the reason why Tsimikas was brought on late on in the game, because he's trying to adapt his game in the same way that Robertson does. So we were always trying to get round the back of Chelsea to pull the ball back into the box for someone to come onto it, because let's be honest, we're not winning aerial balls against that back three with Salah, Mane and Jota, really, are we? So it's interesting setup.
I can't hear you, by the way, Kojo.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious me. Sorry. Here we go. That's my bad. Sorry. So I'll say Maram. So I'll say Maram. What happened was, for me anyway, in that second half, I want to analyze Chelsea's shape, because what it looked like to me was they were restricting Liverpool to long range shots. They were restricting Liverpool to, as Steve said, if you play long balls, you're not winning aerial battles with Mohamed Salah, Jota, Firmino, or Sadio Mane. What did you notice about Liverpool's shape that made them so Chelsea's shape, sorry, that made them so efficient in that second half? And then we're going to go into individuals after, because it's something we need to talk about. But yeah, go on.
I think we didn't learn anything new about Chelsea's defensive structure. I think we saw it perfectly in that game, specifically when they were a man down. But I think that's when fans truly understood how much coaching has went into this. So this is the same group of players that Lampard had. It's just the difference that now they have a bit more understanding between players, and the distances between each player is so compact that you can't penetrate them through centrally. I don't want to turn into the Pep meme, but it's quite literally that. That's what makes them so interesting, is that they're very hard to penetrate centrally. And with wing backs like Aspilicueta, you can shut down the flanks, and I think that's where Liverpool a bit struggled. In the first 15 minutes of the game, when they started really well, we had a really high pressure, and it was quite entertaining to see as a neutral. I don't hate them. It was quite entertaining. The only difference is that they were not really they were not taking advantage of the opportunities they were creating. And then when Chelsea went a man down, they became really compact, and that's when they lost out by having Trent Alexander-Arnold in the central spaces because they were already so compact. So I think that's what I really appreciate about Tuchel is that he's built this really solid structure over a year, I think. And it's quite impressive, really. I generally do believe that they have one of the best structures. And I think it's a good testament to how, yes, players are important, but it's also how you protect them and put them in this system that takes out the strengths and very clear instructions and hides their weaknesses. And I think that's what they did really well. I think it was nice communication between the players and the manager.
Excellent. Now, sticking on Chelsea, there's someone we need to talk about, someone that we used to have in our team, a striker by the name of Romelu Lukaku. Now, this is no agenda driven of mine. For me, even at United, my issue was, for me, I didn't think he performed enough in big games. He had these moments against PSG. He scored against Real Madrid in his debut Man United game in the Super Cup. But other than that, he had times where he was just either anonymous or he missed big chances. But in this game, considering the one of the centre backs that he's facing is Virgil van Dijk, do you think he has an issue with big games, or do you think it's like a thing where maybe he needed a bit more help, is more isolated because they were down to 10 men?
I think yeah, and I think we saw that in Inter Milan is that Lukaku works really well with a striker that he can play off of. He's really good when it comes to movement, and I think it makes him a really good outlet for Chelsea. I think that's what they were missing in terms of having a target in that front to actually direct their passes to. I think one weakness we may have seen with Lukaku, and I don't think it's really that. I think he's one of the best strikers in the world right now. It's just holding my hands up. I'm going to say it. But I think maybe one issue was when they were a man down in the second half, I think Lukaku was forced to maybe carry the ball because, again, of the lack of forward players that they had. I think he was forced to carry the ball more so in transitions, and I don't think he's the best ball carrier. I think we even saw him trip on his own feet at one moment in time. But I think other than that, I think in terms of his movement, in terms of his positioning, in terms of his hold up on the ball, it's quite excellent. He does this thing where that's what I enjoyed. So he did this thing against Van Dijk where he just pushes up against him and receives the balls and returns quickly, leaves him behind. And I think it was a bit unfair to judge the game because football is really unpredictable, and then when you go a man down, it's really hard to analyze and take forward anything that happened in the game simply because of the circumstances. But I think actually did quite well against Van Dijk.
Yeah, no, I actually do think he did well against Van Dijk as well. And I'm going to come to Claudio about this because, okay, so against Arsenal, which is definitely a lower caliber of defender, but regardless, he scored almost a carbon copy of a goal he scored for Inter Milan against Fiorentina, I believe, when it was played out to the right. So Reece James taking the place of whoever that was, and he cuts in the tap in, and of course, as Maron said, his movement is fantastic. He went in unnoticed and tapped it in. What do you feel like you need to do to get the best out of Lukaku this season? Is there certain players you think should play with him as strikers or just behind him? What would you think will get the best out of him?
I think we all know, we've all seen enough of Lukaku to know his strengths now. Physically, his hold-up play is very good. You've seen him against Arsenal where he was at his best, really. I know, like you said, the caliber against Arsenal wasn't the best, but it was his first week at Chelsea. He's only trained with the team for about 4 or 5 days, but his intelligence to know the players around him, like Mason Mount and Kai Havertz, with the system we play, it's like 2 number 10s really behind him, inverted wingers and not such as wide wingers. So I think that will help Lukaku a lot because he likes players coming in and around him, players he can feed off from. But also the formation suits him well when it comes to the fullbacks because he loves those balls getting whipped in as well. So, I think it's just about utilising him to his strengths. With Lukaku, He gives you the option of you can sort of, if you need to play long and give it to Lukaku, you can hold it up and bring others into play. Like Moran said, when it comes to dribbling, we saw him do that little trip, and that's probably not his best strength when he's running at players. But when you're sort of giving him the ball and you're providing him with the chances, he's a natural killer in front of goal. He will score us those 20 goals, which we've literally craved for since Diego Costa's left now. And I fully believe he will be a success here. I just think he's got the right players around him. Also at Inter as well, Conte took him to another level, I think. He's not only learned to sort of play as a one-man striker where he has before, he was sort of in a partnership with Martinez, and I think that actually helped him a lot in terms of his overall game as a striker now. So, I think we'll benefit from that massively.
Absolutely. Now, let's go back to Liverpool. Steve, this actually never crossed my mind, but it was said to me yesterday, so I want to post this to you. A Liverpool fan said that it's time for Liverpool to maybe start to phase out Sadio Mane because he has dropped in form. I know. I just want to ask the question because his form has dropped. That is true, but I think we still know that he is a quality footballer. But is he in the state of a decline now? Is it happening when it starts to slow down, or do you think he's still just trying to find his feet again after a poor season previously?
He's out of form is the short answer to that. And the issue with Sadio Mane was that last season when our system fell apart and we lost the centre backs and then we were playing centre midfielders at centre backs, the problem we had was he couldn't engage with Ronaldo properly and he couldn't engage with Robertson properly. And the telling game for me was against Everton when Seamus Coleman missed a free header. That for the rest of the season put the kibosh on Andrew Robertson as an attacking force. He decided to be more defensive minded than going forward. So it's going to take a time for Mane to come back because Mane's success was being involved in a three-way link up with Ronaldo and Robertson, who both would get beyond him. That didn't happen at all last year. Mane very often turned with the ball to face up the defence, and there was 2 or 3 players in front of him, and he would try and beat them. So he was trying too hard last season. That was his problem, and that happens to footballers when they lose form, and he's certainly guilty of that. I don't think he's a spent force. I don't think he should be somebody that's phased out. You show me a footballer that hasn't had a season where they haven't hit the highs in terms of their form. That's all he's having at the moment. The interesting thing is, I now think that Jota is a guy that's going to challenge him for his position rather than challenging Bobby Firmino. I don't think Jota can play through the middle particularly effectively. So I think Sadio's going to be looking over his shoulder at Diogo Jota for the rest of this season. He's going to have to find some form from somewhere. And it might be a time to give him a game or two on the bench and let him, when Bobby's fit, let him come and try and take his shirt back from Jota, because the front three have had it really, really their own way for 3 years, pretty much. They've been undroppable. Their results, their numbers, their performances, the trophies we've won puts them in that position. And now we need to see some competition. Now we need to see somebody stepping in and saying, actually, you can't have it your own way. I want to play too. And I think Sadio will benefit from that. But he's certainly very, very out of form at the moment. And it is a concern, but I certainly wouldn't be writing him off.
Well, you've kind of answered my next question, because I was going to say, in the front three, Firmino's always been the one in question. And Jota, when he came last season, yes, he got injured for quite a part of it, but he had a major impact before his injury. He was performing to a very high level. So you don't see Jota as being not the final part, but maybe if Firmino is not performing anymore, you don't think he can be in the middle?
It will be dependent on the opposition. So if you're playing Manchester City or you're playing Chelsea, you've got to play Bobby Firmino because he occupies the space that the central defensive midfielder wants to use for Chelsea and for Manchester City. So Jorginho and Rodri, for instance, struggle when Firmino's doing what he's supposed to do. And certainly in the first 20 minutes of the first half, Jorginho really struggled to get into the game. His key passes into areas where you could hurt the opposition with 0. And I picked that up from a Chelsea website I had a look at earlier today. So it will be horses for courses. The reason why I say Jota for me is more of a challenge for Mane is because, for the same reason I don't think Salah can play through the middle particularly effectively against everybody, Bobby Firmino can play with things going on in a 360 circumference around him. He's got very good awareness of where people are and where his teammates are. If you're used to playing predominantly wide, the touchline becomes your friend, and you've got the safety to know that there's very little going on behind you. And that's a craft you have to learn. And I don't think Diogo Jota's learnt that craft yet. I wanted to see someone come in to challenge Bobby as a. It's not really a false nine. That's a bit of a misnomer to call Firmino a false nine because he does so much more defensively. And it's easy to see why Klopp is so loyal to him because of the work he does without the ball, the ugly stuff, the stuff that stops the opposition playing. Rodri in particular really struggles playing against Firmino because he occupies the space he wants. So I think it will be horses for courses. We'll go away to Norwich like we did, and we'll be comfortable to play Jota in the middle because his movement and his directness and his willingness to run in behind will get us goals. But against teams that are more disciplined, like Chelsea, because they are for me probably the most defensive disciplined side at the moment, and against the likes of Manchester City, I expect Firmino to play in those games.
Yeah, well, against Norwich, you could bring back Florence Cinema on goal and you still smack him.
Do you know what? Right now we'd take him, mate. Right now we'd have him back.
Absolutely smack him every time. All right, now we will delve into the transfer business for the two clubs. But before that, Maren, I'm a United fan, you're a United fan. So just want to quickly delve into United and Wolves very quickly. Just your thoughts on the performance of said club, and said club not being Wolverhampton Wanderers, obviously. Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Sorry, I did a U. I just did the U.
Don't follow me. I'm a bad example. Please.
So, I don't think it was one of our best performances, to say the least. I think a lot of our issues showed up specifically in that game. So I had a lot of issues in terms of how we just built out and how we tried to move the ball forwards. But it wasn't just that. So I talked about our build-up structure against Southampton and how we really struggled against their press. And I think that was evident again against who did we play against? Oh my God. Who did we play against?
Wolves.
There we go. Yeah. Sorry. So I think it was really evident against Wolves, but I think the same issues were there. But I don't think that was our only issue. I think we really struggled when we were in the creation phase. I think the primary problem that happened is we struggled to get the ball out, but when we did, we found our players in very isolated positions that they ended up losing possession anyways or bringing the ball backwards. So we didn't find our players in good positions. That's my primary issue. And I think there's way too many distances between our back line, between our midfield, and between our forward line. I don't think there's a lot of communication there. So I think that's my primary concern going forward. I think Sancho is still adjusting. I think we need to give him time. And a lot of people were making huge criticisms off the back of that match, and I don't think that's really fair because the player is really determined by the structure that he's in, and I don't think we found him in good positions enough. And I think we needed to do better in terms of creating going forward. I think Bruno sometimes dropped off a bit too much. Was not in the correct positions to receive centrally. I don't think we were effective from wide either. So yeah, I'd be concerned. I think I can't see this continuing for a long time. I think the issues are bound to address if us fans are seeing it and complaining about it. I'm pretty sure the coach and the manager see it too. So hopefully, international break now. Hopefully, in the training ground, it's being talked about. Yeah.
Is it more than a Fred problem because everyone is going towards the
okay?
Go on.
I love Fred. I do. I really love Fred. And I think he's being given some unfair slack. So yes, he didn't have the best of games. I think he did have a poor to bad performance, but that's not necessarily just Fred. I think again, the structure that a player is in really affects his performance. And I don't think we put Fred in ideal positions to receive the ball. So we do this thing a lot of the times where we give him the ball and pass the ball to him when we see a pressing marker behind him trying to actively get the ball from him. So I think that was my issue, is that we don't find him in good positions enough, and I don't think that's something that's being instructed. We don't have really these concise patterns in our back line. It says, okay, Varane passes to Wan-Bissaka, Fred goes higher up the pitch, Wan-Bissaka passes to Fred. There's not really that solid communication there. So it can lead to these mishaps. I think Fred sometimes is a victim of that because he actually is really on the ball a lot, more than a McTominay is. And he does want to play it forward. And I think that's why we tend to scrutinize him. I do think that, yes, there were criticisms to be made of Fred, but it's not just Fred. It's bigger than Fred. I think that it's in the entire midfield. And I don't think United should be complaining about Fred. I don't think he's our biggest problem right now. The entire midfield is a big debacle. I don't know what's happening there, given that we didn't sign a midfielder.
Well, that's another discussion for another day. Trust me on that one. Steve, very quickly, she mentioned the gap between maybe like Bruno and the rest of the midfield. Now, Bobby Firmino, before he joined Liverpool played as number 10 at Hoffenheim.
Yeah.
But he's obviously in your front three. He is your kind of like a striker, essentially. That's the position he's playing is number 9-ish, but there's no one in front of him. Then there's no one behind him as number 10. But with Bruno Fernandes, he has a striker ahead of him. Do you feel like it's instruction based that he keeps making that run in behind, or being the most furthest up front, or do you think he's sort of doing his own thing and that can be as a detriment towards the midfielders playing behind him as a two?
It's off the cuff football, isn't it? At times, it's what you play, what you see, what's put in front of you, and it's about the structure, which was exactly right, and it's been mentioned before. And it's about, and I often say this about Liverpool, it's about giving the player the ball in the right place at the right time when he can use it. There's no sense in giving a guy the ball, like Maran said, when they're being closed down and they're not particularly press resistant. And you could accuse Fred sometimes of being not press resistant. So with regards to Bobby Firmino, he also played in a slightly deeper midfield position for Hoffenheim too at times. So the adaptation to what Liverpool want to do, and he has to be very careful of the spaces he runs into because Mane and Salah want to use those spaces, which is why 4-2-3-1 for me absolutely kills us. It congests what happens in front of the back four, and then you find you'll know when things aren't working for Liverpool because Salah will go wider and wider and wider and wider, and he will become on the periphery of the game. He'll basically try and be an orthodox winger, which he clearly isn't. He's an inside forward, inverted winger, whatever you want to say. He's a forward. So with regards to I think the way I see Man United, the best performance I've seen from Bruno is when he played almost as a false nine against Leeds. I thought it was sensational against Leeds. His timing of his runs was brilliant. His link-up play with Pogba was really good. And I happen to think that a lot of what goes on, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent with Man United, is about where you play Paul Pogba. You can't. I don't think you can play Paul Pogba anywhere near a double pivot. He doesn't have the discipline to play in that position. If I can see that as a Liverpool fan, I think everyone in this lobby can see that. So, what you'd say to Paul Pogba is what Juventus said to him is, look, and I know they had Sami Khedira, Claudio Marchisio, and Andre Pirlo behind him, so he had no defensive responsibilities. He was an enigma. You'll remember that shot he cut across the ball and it swerved in the far top corner in one of the games. You've got to say to Paul Pogba, go and do your thing and don't worry about the rest of it. We'll do it. And then you've got arguably one of, if not the best creative midfielder in the world. And I include Kevin De Bruyne in that conversation. There's things Paul Pogba can do, Kevin De Bruyne can't. So I'll tell you this now, if you got someone like Antonio Conte or Mancini, God forbid, because Man City linked there, I don't think that's not going to happen. I would be really, really worried about your squad because you've got the potential to do big things. Under Ollie, and I always say this, I work in a certain job. I get to a level, my capabilities stop, and someone else takes it on because they're bigger and better at what they do than I am. Ollie has reached his the top of his capabilities, and he isn't capable of taking Manchester United on, and the coaches around him aren't capable of taking Manchester United on. Michael Carrick was a brilliant player, but where's his credibility as a coach? So you've got to ask what's being instructed of the players week by week. You can freeze frame any Man United game you want if you work for Man United and say to a player, what were you doing then? And they won't be able to tell you because the structure isn't there, as Maram said. It's a really key point. it's off the cuff football, and we're seeing it used to be all football 20 years ago was off the cuff football. Football's become much more systemic now, but Manchester United haven't adopted that systemic nature. They tend to hope that a bit of inspiration from Bruno or Pogba wins in the game, and I think the biggest example of that was your Europa Cup final against Villarreal, where 110 minutes before he makes a substitution, he's clearly hoping one of those guys can earn themselves a yard and score a goal. Now, I'm sorry to remind you of it, but it's a really good way of explaining what I see. And I started watching Man United because of the people I'm spending time on with pods. And it's, do you know what? When you watch them as a neutral, and I don't invest myself in them the same way that you do, so I watch them differently, the issues are huge. And I don't know how you solve them.
Can I?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so you mentioned a lot of points that I had in mind as well. Is that I don't think I agree with almost a lot of it, but my issue is that I don't think that the problems that we're seeing on the pitch are hard to solve. That's my issue. I don't think that they're hard to solve. So we've seen a lot of our backline being exposed in our midfield, receiving the ball in bad positions. If you just lessen that distance and you play Wan-Bissaka deeper, then the issue of building out the back is way easier, and then you're able to progress the ball into front and third. Yeah, so that's my number one issue, is that these problems that we're seeing are easily fixable. I don't know why they're not being fixed. That's first. Second is, I think that Oli depends a lot on the individual capabilities of the players. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Because when you have brilliant players, when you put brilliant players together, they're going to do brilliant things. But I think there needs to be a balance of positional discipline, like giving the players a framework to work on will allow them to succeed. Yes, I think he's giving over the past 2-3 years, I think he's given players a very good platform to work with in terms of Rashford and allowing them to score goals, obviously. I think the connection that he's developed between certain players like Martial and Rashford has been great. But I think going forward now, I think there needs to be a bit more understanding of positioning, especially against low blocks. I think Villarreal killed us because of the idea of positioning. We had no idea how to break down a low block.
Mm-hmm.
I think we weren't suffocating them wide enough. And I think we kept trying to go through the center spaces when it was just not possible. I think that's my issue, is that the issues are actually quite fixable. And I think if you give that a bit more balance, inject more balance into the idea of giving players clear instructions when they're struggling, will do this team much, much better than what it is.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. And I would say, if you're going to be a pragmatic manager, which is clearly what Solskjaer wants to be, then certain things on the pitch have to be a given. And those things are the things that you just spoke about. And when the game unfolds, like against Wolves and against Southampton, I don't see enough from him trying to solve those in real time. It's all very well going sitting in an office, a meeting room with the players and saying, look, this didn't work really well, but good managers, the top managers in world football, are able to deal with things on the fly as they're happening. And there's too many managers, like Pochettino does it as well. They stand there with their arms folded, looking a bit perplexed, wondering how this is happening. Well, that's where he needs to review his backroom staff and think, okay, now I need someone with the same as Lampard at Chelsea didn't do. Because he turned to Jody Morris, and Jody Morris would look at him and say, what are you looking at me for? I can't tell you how to fix that. And that's through lack of experience. Not anything wrong with Jody Morris, but you've got to bring in seasoned professional footballers, seasoned professional coaches that can say, actually, do the things that you've just said, shorten the distances, that'll solve that problem. But
yeah, definitely.
You can see it, I can see it, Kojo can see it, Claudio can see it. Why are the club not dealing with it? There's your $1 million question, isn't it?
That's really perplexing as a fan, because I think that Ole is not a bad manager. I do think that he's a good manager in terms of the rebuild that he's done so far, has put the club in a better position than what he found it in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's great. I think his signings so far, most of them have been quite great. I think my issue is that I think he needs to develop a better structure and possession out of it. And I think for that, he needs better coaches if he wants to survive. Because I think sorry, I'm running a bit long here. I think what's annoying about United is we see them doing these great things in one games, and then after Cup, we just don't do them anymore. I think, for don't know if you remember this, but I think back to the Liverpool 0-0 draw at Anfield last season, I think our pressing that first 30 minutes was amazing. It was sublime. That was one of the best pressing combinations I've seen United do. And it was really credit to actually the double pivot, funnily enough, because McFred had a very good game. And then we just abandoned that. And then we did it again against Manchester City when we won 2-0. It was really high pressing in 15 minutes. And then we didn't do that. And then we just abandoned it. And that's what I don't understand. I do think that Oli wants to adapt to certain opposition, and that's not an issue. But I think sometimes he tends to just hold a little back when he should be a bit more involved, especially against lower quality opposition, I would say. So yeah, I think it's
totally agree.
Yeah. But to give him credit, his personnel hasn't been quite great in midfield. Fred is not a great pivot, to say the least. So
it's not.
Yeah.
Abandon it and do something else. Abandon it and do something else and play to your strengths. It's probably the way to go there.
Like, the issue is the double pivot is supposed to be one of the most solid. When it works, but it should when it works, it should be the most solid way to build out of the back and screen the defense. But his personnel, the players that he has, aren't allowing him to do that. So I would have thought going to into this transfer window, the first player that you would buy is a midfielder. So yeah, I don't quite get it. I think there's a lot of question marks that aren't being answered right now with Manchester United. Yeah,
totally.
I think that's an excellent segue because a team that did buy a midfielder is Chelsea Football Club. So going back to the topics in hand, Liverpool and Chelsea, we're going to analyze the transfer window. Claudio, you ended your window with Saul Niguez from Atletico Madrid. How happy are you with your window and why? Did you address areas you thought your club needed addressing?
Yeah, I think it was an enough perfect transfer window for us. I think obviously it was clear for everyone to see the priority was landing a striker, not just any striker. We needed a striker who's going to come in, hit the ground running, because that's what we needed. We've got a young core. We've got some leadership and experience in there with Azpilicueta, Thiago Silva, those types of players. But we're also surrounded by the likes of Mason Mount, Reece James, Christensen. There's Chilwell. There's a lot of Havertz who's come in first season. So we needed someone who was coming in, hit the ground running. And obviously Lukaku's been there and done it before in the Premier League. So I'm more than happy when we signed him. I've been a fan of Lukaku for God knows how long now. So I was delighted with that. And then obviously the centre mid, we needed cover because Gilmore's gone on loan to Norwich. So I was quite surprised, to be honest, that we left it this late. I was sweating a little bit last night because with Gilmore out on loan, it did leave us with a lack of options. I mean, Kante, Jorginho and Kovacic is the three centre mids, and then it would have been sort of between, Ampadu on loan now. He went on a late loan, but between sort of Ampadu and Loftus-Cheek, Barkley's still here, but I highly doubt he's going to get any game time. So, yeah, I was happy with Saul, and I think it's a really, really good buy, to be honest with you. He's got a big point to prove now. He's been dropped by Simeone, so he's a left-footed midfielder. He's box to box. He's got a great engine, but someone who's been moulded by Diego Simeone, you know what he's going to bring. So I'm really excited, and just from sort of the interviews, you can see he's really excited to start this sort of new phase, and it's sort of like a win-win for us because it's a loan with an option to buy. If it doesn't go well, we know next summer we can. It's well known that our targets are Declan Rice and Tchouaméni from Monaco. So, yeah, I'd say it's an enough perfect window. Can't complain.
Yeah, I can't lie. Saul is someone that I want to do. I don't even really think about whether he fits Man United or not. I'm just a big fan of his. I love watching football. So, but just quickly for you again, with those signings now, what do you expect from your club? Is it win a certain trophy or at least compete for certain trophies? What is the expectation coming from your side?
Yeah, I think we have to win a trophy. It's hard to put it down on what trophy we win. I'd like to win a domestic trophy. Champions League, obviously PSG are the clear favourites due to their summer signing madness, like FIFA in real life, weren't it really? But obviously, yeah, we're expected to win the league. I'd say because, first of all, obviously we've got a world-class manager. Thomas Tuchel's coming, he's proven himself instantly. when you look at the managers around. Don't write Liverpool off, although they may have done better in terms of summer signings. I felt like they obviously haven't replaced Ronaldo, so I think it's one of those where you look at each squad and each squad kind of has their weakness. Like Man City didn't get their Harry Kane, the striker, so they're sort of having to rely on Jesus, Kevin De Bruyne up there. And I feel like our squad has actually been complete now. We've got depth in all areas, so I'd be lying if I said we shouldn't be up there. I mean, we've got to be competing for the title. There's no doubts about it. But it's strange because when you look at it, last season we was in fourth, and we scraped fourth purely because Tottenham. But just because Leicester bottled it on the last day. And so when you look at over the course of a Premier League season, when you look at our form last season, we against the lower side teams, that's where we struggled the most. We were sort of struggling to break down those sort of weaker teams to like sit back against us. So with the addition of Lukaku there, I think that will help massively. But on your question, we have to win a trophy or two.
Okay. Every time the word trophy was mentioned, Steve was shaking his head. So, Liverpool Football Club, are you? Well, I think I know the answer to this question, but are you satisfied with your window? And what would you expect this season from Jurgen Klopp's Red Army?
Obviously, we had areas of pressing need to fill spaces by players. We never replaced Ronaldo, which is a concern. Whilst Ronaldo put in a couple of sort of questionable performances last season, his biggest strength was his availability. The guy was as fit as a flea, so to speak, and could play every single game and every minute of every game. And in the 90th minute, he'd be the guy running beyond, trying to create something, or running backwards, trying to stop something. It's a big loss. With regards to, I did a piece on Saul because I genuinely thought we had half a chance of getting him. This is Liverpool's problem. The first 11 could win the league. I genuinely believe that, and they proved they can do that. And don't write them off like Claudio says. Quite, you sleep on Liverpool, then that's up to you. But I don't think anyone should. Yeah. As a squad, if we have to use the squad, I don't think we can win the Premier League. So the issue we have, and this is where there needs to be a change of how we operate as a business. If we'd signed Saul, he would have been probably the most highly paid player in the club because his salary is higher than our highest earner currently. So that was an issue. He doesn't have to take a pay cut. Why would he? He doesn't need to do that. So Liverpool's wage bill is quite low until they start achieving things, and then it's the fifth highest in Europe because it's largely incentive based. So the year we won the Premier League, it was £320 million because of all the bonuses we paid out. Last year it was like 150. So there's a big difference between the two, and it's how Michael Edwards and the guys in the club have structured the wages. We could never have brought Saul Niguez in at 230k a week. It just would have upset the club, and you can't do that. So for me, that is not being an elite club. That is the situation we've come to. Is FSG have won a Champions League, they've won a Premier League. They're now 830% up on the figure that they paid for the football club. If they were to sell it tomorrow, that's the profit they make, 830%. It's never been about football. It's always been a money deal. It's always been about the finances. They never said they would bankroll the club. They never said they were prepared to go toe-to-toe with Abramovich or with Manchester City. They never committed to that. So this massive explosion and all these people on Twitter saying, get down to the protest. Go to the protest. There'll only be 4 of you there because that's not the way that the fans who go to the ground feel. They probably feel now is the right time for the club to think about the next step it goes in, and in tying down their assets long term. That's a classic move before you think about selling something where it's asset based. So it's not inconceivable that Liverpool Football Club at some point will change owners. 830% profit, 350 million to 2.5 billion. Is a really good business deal if you're FSG. You've done your homework, you've done your due diligence, and you've delivered. They're probably going to go and find another club, a German club like a Wolfsburg or someone like that, who's a bit of a sleeping giant they could do the same with. We have as I said before, top first 11. We have a patchy squad, and we don't have an elite club mentality. So 2 out of 3 aren't positives for this season. So it's tough. It will be a tough. We're a salary injury away from pretty much struggling to make the top four, because put some respect on the guy's name. His numbers are insane, and he turns up every single week. And when his career's done, and only when his career's done, because in English football we're really weird how we do this, he will be at the top table in the conversation about forwards that have ever played in the Premier League. He has to be. His numbers are insane. But we cannot be that reliant on one person. We really can't. So no, not a great window for us, but also not a surprising one.
Any expectation in terms of maybe a league position or a trophy?
We're in it to win it. We're in it to win it. There's no point in turning up if you're not in it to win it. That's the Chelsea game, including the Chelsea game, our last 13 league games we haven't lost. I know some of it was back end of last season, but Liverpool is about intensity and momentum. So last season we couldn't do the double training sessions because of the truncated season where we played Saturday, Wednesday, Sunday, Saturday, Wednesday, Sunday. This season we can get back to double sessions. The intensity comes from the effort that's put into training and the momentum that we build, and that's why you guys will laugh. That's why people within our fan base called us mentality monsters, because we've developed this mindset just to ride over the top of everything. And that when you're winning games, players don't tell you they're hurting or they feel unfit and they're injured and they find reasons to go on. When you're struggling for form, like we were at a stage last season, those players can go missing and hide a little bit. So the good feeling is back. Klopp's not unhappy. He would say so. He's his own man. He's not a pushover by any stretch. He will work with what he's got. And if you look at his squads at Mainz, because he had to, and then at Dortmund, he doesn't want a massive squad full of prima donnas. He wants players he can work with. But we should have strengthened, and I do believe we'll regret it.
Okay. Mariam, you want to do one quick on United's window? You want to talk about that?
Go on. Go
All
on.
right, go on then. All right, so cool. So Rafael Varane, Cristiano Ronaldo, Jadon Sancho, Tom Heaton. Is there anyone else I'm forgetting? I think that's about it.
No, that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
In terms of ends, that's
Yes. So, are you satisfied with the window as well? And I guess same question: what would your expectation be for your Manchester United Football Club?
No, I don't think I'm satisfied with the window at all. I think that Sancho was more of a relief signing. We've been waiting for it for like 3 years, and I think I was just relieved by the time that we announced, here we go, we've signed Sancho finally, rather than excitement, because the club really kind of drained it out with all of this chase. But yeah, I am genuinely excited with the player. I think he's a fantastic signing. Team here. So and I do think that Rafael Varane at his price was a good deal, and I think that it wasn't one of our priority positions to buy a center back, but at that price and for that player, you don't miss out. So obviously, you're going to buy Varane at that price. So I think it would be a very exciting partnership with him and Maguire. I think would allow us to play a higher line, and I think would allow Maguire to go forward a bit. And I think we're only going to get positive from this. But where I am a bit disappointed is we've signed another attacker and we haven't signed a midfielder. And I think arguably you can say our forwards is where we're kind of stacked. You have Pogba, Rashford, Sancho, Cavani, Ronaldo. I can go on forever. There's still more players. And Greenwood. And I think that may cause a bigger problem than we might not expect. Maybe it would be fine for the first 3-5 games, but then players will want minutes. So I'm very interested to see how Oli is going to manage that. I have a lot of players, a lot of big names that want to get on the pitch, and I don't really blame them. And then you look at our midfield. So a lot of United fans were not really satisfied with McTominay and Fred. Now you don't even have McTominay, so he's out injured. So I think fans are getting really desperate. I saw tweets like asking me what I thought about Lindelof defensive midfield. So I'm desperate to try it actually, because I think it's insane that we haven't bought a midfielder. I don't care who United want. I don't care if they want Rice. That's fine, but you can't go into the season without a starting midfielder next to Fred. I think that's absolutely ridiculous, because we've seen it for the first 3 games. Leeds was a good game, but we had a lot of space, and not every opponent is Leeds. I think we did really well to exploit that, but not every opponent is Leeds. So I think that's my primary concern. I don't know how we're going to manage this, especially with tough fixtures coming up. We have one of the hardest string of games right around the Champions League group stages. So I'm really concerned about who we're going to play in the midfield. You have a Matic, you have a Fred, you have a McTominay that's out. Am I missing anyone? Who else plays in that? He's not a double player. You have no one. I don't get it. Pogba is not a double pivot player. It may work for a couple of games. I don't think it will. So yeah, I'm not really that satisfied. I'm just really annoyed as a fan, to be honest, with how we seem to have ignored the midfield completely.
Expectation? What do you expect the club to achieve, if anything?
I don't think the squad is ready for a title at all. Yeah, I don't think it is, and I think a solid top 4 finish, and maybe go into after the round of 16 quarterfinal in Champions League. Maybe I want to see us go far, but and I want to see us win the league, but I don't think it's within our capacities. In terms of how we look on the pitch and the players that we have right now. So I think it's just about maybe a Carabao Cup, just to piss off Pep. It would be nice, maybe. So yeah.
He does own that cup, for goodness sake. He's owned it for far too long. He sounds stick away from it. Okay, I think that's a nice way we're gonna round up there. United fan, tell them that we're gonna win the league. I don't agree. But anyway, regardless, it's been a fantastic show, guys. Thank you so much. I just want to say this right now. You three are special because the number of viewers I had up there earlier, I was smiling like a madman. I don't know if you guys realized, because it was ridiculous.
How many?
That's the effect that you guys have. That's not me think. I've been doing.
How many?
It was like 400 plus.
You're joking.
Seriously, I was like, that's good. I think the whole time. So that's you guys. That's your effect. I've been doing this for a while, and the highest number I had was 10. So that's fantastic. Thanks, guys. But like I always do, I let you guys plug yourself because that's very important. Let's go, ladies first. Marum, please plug yourself.
So you can find me in the one place I'm at, just Twitter. It's Maram90.
Perfect.
That's it.
Claudio.
Yeah, my at's just on there, so it's ClaudioD__. I just post basically all Chelsea content on my Twitter. So if you want to see Chelsea content, feel free to follow. So if you don't like Chelsea content, I wouldn't advise it.
Fair enough. And Steve, where can they find you, bro?
You can get me at my at Steve Plunk. It's not just open to Liverpool fans; it's open to all fans. I'm a football fan as well as a Liverpool fan, and you can catch me here on Usman Talks United on a Friday night doing Friday Rivals, where we have a good panel usually that comes in and we just dissect the week that's been, and it's a banter fest really. This was really good tonight because this was a bit more of a breakdown of what's going on. That's a bit more banter based, but guys, please, I want to see 400 in that box on Friday night as well. So yeah, this has been really cool. So I'm always up for a collaboration, so give us a shout. It's cool. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me. Thank you, the other two as well, for joining me. All the links will be in the bio, of course. I'm Kojo, Free Midfield Podcast, YouTube, Free Midfield everywhere else on audios, and even TikTok for some reason. I don't know why, but it's what it is. But yeah, thank you for joining us. Shout out Usman Talks United. Peace.